I think that Atiku, for whom I do have some respect, genuinely, he's not perfect, but I think he's got some good points, some strengths in his character. I think Atiku should become the daddy of this thing. He should become a statesman who stands behind Peter and whoever his running mate will be, which I hope is Dati. Well, I mean, I don't know, it could be somebody else. I took a shine to Dati because he's so outspoken. But that doesn't mean I agree with everything he says. But I quite like people who say what they're thinking, you know, in straight shooters. Anyway, I think Atiku should be the father in this situation. He shouldn't compete with them anymore. If you like, they're almost beneath him. He's a former vice president. He's nearly 80. Yeah? And I think if Atiku does that and rallies the northern vote, I think they could do rather well.
But some would make the argument that when you compare Atiku in terms of age with Tinubu, and Tinubu is obviously planning to run again, at least that's what we think at this point, in 2027, then there's absolutely no reason why Atiku shouldn't run. I mean, you yourself said on one of your programs that Tinubu is not a spring chicken when it comes to age, and that it won't be the end of the world if his time in office ends in 2027, having served one term. But clearly he's planning to run. Nobody's sitting down. I mean, a lot of people are focusing on Atiku in terms of age, but nobody's really talking that much about Tinubu himself as well. And he clearly is already incumbent, and he's, you know, fully planning to run in 2027.
Well, he shouldn't. There are lots of things we all do that we shouldn't do. We're human. He's enjoying the power. If he can still stand on his two legs and, you know, mount a pulpit or a rostrum, he can go ahead, but he's too old, in my opinion. I think we need, you know, slightly younger people. And so I'm not discriminating against Atiku. I think both Atiku and Tinubu should stand aside. I do. And not just because of age, where Tinubu is concerned. I want to lodge a serious complaint against Tinubu. I think he's really bad for this country. I used to have some regard for him, but after what he's done in Rivers State with the state of emergency.
That's your state.
My state. I'm just appalled by his behavior. And then there are so many other things, like you're coming in from the airport and every single lamppost has a poster of Tinubu on it. The same thing along many of the highways in town. What kind of cult of personality nonsense is this? You're supposed to be using those billboards as a means to celebrate the country and what it has to offer. They should be saying things like, welcome to Abuja, come to the cultural center, blah, blah, blah. It's all him, him, him. So I don't like this cult of personality. I think it's unhealthy. I think it's tyrannical. And I would really, really like to see him move on. And do you know what? Nobody's all bad. They say that things like some of his, even the mighty Financial Times newspaper of the United Kingdom recently wrote an article in which it praised Tinubu for certain economic moves. I mean, I didn't agree with the article, but hey, I'm not an economics expert. And so there are, you know, there are some things
that... But I mean, isn't it the same sort of, perhaps in a slightly different way, but similar as well, the same kind of cult of personality that you've got around Peter Obi, for example? I mean, Peter Obi has a movement that has adopted his name as their, you know, their name tag. They're called Obedience. I mean, they follow Peter Obi like through thick and thin. I mean, if you listen to them on the internet, you know, read their stuff on the internet, it's like, you know, we don't care what he does, we don't care where he goes, we're going to follow him. So isn't that the same kind of cult of personality?
Well, you know, anybody who's fortunate enough to have a name that lends itself well to that kind of sloganizing or sloganeering is lucky. After all, you have articulated. You have in Rivers State a deadbeat governor who has just surrendered completely to the forces of God knows what. His name is Kogbara. His group were called Simplified. So, you know, the obedient thing is the same thing. It's a play on words. But I think I can even just see him on the screen, and I'm just so irritated. But we'll talk about Sim another day. The thing, I don't approve of unconditional worship of anybody.
Right.
I do not approve of hero worship. If Peter Obi does something really obnoxious tomorrow, I will be the first one to say so. You know? So I know that there are people who,
right.
even if he was caught misbehaving in the worst possible way, they will still not give way and admit that he could be wrong. But I do not believe to that. I do not belong to that school of thought.
Right. But you just to be clear, you don't mind him being in the coalition, or you wouldn't. I mean, you would have preferred it if he stood on his own, as he did in 2023.
Yes, exactly. That's it. I would have preferred him to stand on his own, but I don't. You know, I can live with the coalition.
Right.
And I think don't listen. What I keep on telling people: do not listen to this view that Ashiwaju Jagaban is so omnipotent, omniscient that nobody else stands a chance of beating him in 2027. It's not a done deal. If the coalition gets its act together, curbs its more unsavory members, and presents a united front, there's no reason why Tinubu and APC cannot be replaced in 2027.
Right, but what about the bounce? The bounce that Atiku got from coming second in the 2023 election, and Amechi got from coming second in the 2023 APC primaries. I mean, should they just forget about all that?
No.
Because it suggests that they have considerable popularity amongst the Nigerian people.
First of all, I don't trust the results of the 2023 election. I have no idea who really won it. I really don't. There was so much mago. I don't know who won the 2023 election in certain states and federally. So I can't say for sure that Atiku came second. It could be that Peter came first and they shoved him to third to bring him down a peg or two and demoralize his supporters. Do you know what I mean? Maybe Tinubu won, maybe he didn't win. But I'm not sure of that because of INEC's disgraceful performance. Then, on the issue of Amechi coming second in the PDP primary, in the APC primaries, I was rather proud of him because people were caving in one after the other, giving their votes to Ashiwaju and stepping back for Ashiwaju. I was very proud of Amechi for standing his ground and insisting on going ahead, even though it was obvious he wasn't going to go anywhere in that bribe-charged environment.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was mentioned as a cautionary note to the coalition is that if they choose Peter Obi as their candidate, they have to figure out how to sell him to the north. I think it was Wale Olaoye wrote a brilliant article in the Leadership newspaper. How careful should they be not to poke that bear?
This thing about the north. Well, from what I can see, Tinubu has already upset a lot of northerners. So I would say that many of them, at least the ones in my personal circle, not all of them, but some, have no intention of supporting him again. I don't know what he promised them that they're so bitter against him, you know? And I'm going to tell you that even amongst Obedience, there is a branch of the Obedience movement that thinks the only good thing Tinubu has ever done is putting the North in its place. Now, I don't have a view on that. But all I can say is that I'm not sure it's going to be that difficult to topple Tinubu in the North this time round. That's if he even won the North in the first place. How do you know that Atiku didn't win the North? How do you know that Peter didn't do much better in the North than we think? We're only relying on the numbers that INEC gave us.
Well, to be honest, that's all we can rely on.
Yes.
I mean, what would your advice be to the leadership of the ADC coalition going forward? We've got about a minute and a half left in this very interesting conversation.
One of the reasons why people voted for Buhari, even though they didn't like a lot of the people around him, was they believed he was a disciplined man who, if he got into office, would control all the bad eggs in his party. That is what I'm hoping with Peter Obi, is that if he makes it, some of these people who need to be disciplined or need to be pushed aside politely, not necessarily insulted or disrespected, and maybe they could even be rewarded, but I would say that you need to put the most popular person front and center. You need to assure the public that those who have a less than fantastic reputation are not going to be the image of the party. They're not going to have that much power. And I suppose it's such a difficult balancing act, because you can't go around saying, well, this guy is my political ally, but I know he's a rogue, so if I win the presidency, I'm going to marginalize him, because obviously he's going to get pissed off and he's not going to support you. So it's difficult. I don't envy Peter. I don't envy Atiku. I don't envy Amechi. They have to find some kind of balance that works, But I just think Nigerians, they have shown so little tendency to stand up and be countered when the wrong thing is done. I call them the sheeple, the Nigerian sheeple. Stop behaving like sheep. Look at everything that's going on, judge, and protest when there's a reason to protest.